Nobody ever thinks about a statue. First of all, you don't think about going into the Hall of Fame. What I thought about, I want to be the best I could possibly be at whatever it was I tried to do. And I never thought about, well, maybe one day there'll be a statue. You just don't think about those things.
I got a call from Lee Polikoff, and he said he'd like to come down and visit my studio and visit me. We had a nice conversation just talking about their desire, wanting to honor Bob. Felt as though there was a very big need for that. Also a sense that he was part of Nebraska history and still is, but in a real vibrant way, and that there was nothing of that magnitude out there.
I met Bill White, who was a first baseman for the Cardinals and later became the first black president of the National League. He was in Omaha for a get-together, and I was talking to him, and then a couple weeks later he called and said, you know, why hasn't Omaha ever done anything for Bob? And it was an interesting question. Bob is a very private guy, a very principled man, and so he's not out in the community talking about his accomplishments and achievements.
Still revered in Major League Baseball lore today, Omaha's Bob Gibson was nothing short of spectacular throughout his 17-year career with the St. Louis Cardinals. A graduate of Creighton University, where he played both basketball and baseball, Gibson would go on to win 2 World Series, 2 Cy Young Awards, and a National League MVP award. Cardinals number 45 was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1981 after retiring and returning home to Omaha in 1975. Nearly 40 years later, Omaha prepared to honor Gibson in a larger-than-life way. To accomplish this, the Sarpy County Sports Commission rallied around this Bob Gibson Heritage Project and chose Omaha artist Littleton Alston to create the sculpture. Alston, an associate professor at Creighton, Gibson's alma mater, is no stranger to creating monumental pieces around Omaha.
When Littleton and I first met, he said, this needs to be a major league piece. This is nothing wrong with minor league, but this is going to be what you would expect to see at Yankee Stadium or in Kansas City or any of the major league teams. And that's our goal, is to make it something that people want to come out and see.
I did a series of sketches and drawings, talked to Bob and to the committee about it. And then when we settled pretty much on general ideas, I began to do maquettes and did some sketching and then some small clay versions, and then did a final clay version, which was unveiled at Warner Park. I'll have models come in first and do drawings and photographs. And I was fortunate to have Chris Gibson, Bob's son, pose a couple of times in uniform. My process is from the inside out. So even on the head, I would sculpt the skull, and then from the skull, work my way out. Well, even on the clay, I would begin to shape the forms and then flay it, put all the muscles in. Some work from the outside in, where they scale it and work it in. And some even use computers to scale things in, like how you manufacture cars. I don't believe in that at all. I believe in the human hand. I believe in the emotion and the intelligence of the human hand. It's a long journey, and it's one that an artist, it's a hard one.
The artistic journey that Littleton began reached a boiling point during the summer months as the heat swelled in his downtown Omaha studio.
There's a critical decision that was made by me, but it was just by chance or providence. I think it's providence. I had the choice, and it seemed like a casual choice, to get a high temperature clay or a regular temperature clay. And just for some reason, I said, I think I'll take the high temperature. Now, the high temperature is a little harder to work. Well, this summer was a bit much and created issues with sagging, but not close to the issues I would have faced if I had gone with the regular temperature clay. If it were not that hot, I probably could have gone much longer. But 6 or 7 hours and you're whipped. But when you leave, you feel a sense of accomplishment, even though it's going slower. The heat slows your response. But that world that you enter, that you want to go in, that's part of the creative process, where time really sort of slows down, is what you seek and live for. So it was worth every second, yeah.
Here's the detail of it, you can see.
When I saw it, shortly before it went out to be cast, I was looking at those little details of the socks, the stitching around the numbers, the glove, and those kinds of things. And he's spot on all that.
The rule was Bob has to approve whatever we do. And if he's happy, I'll be happy.
With the final clay sculpture approved, Littleton set out to take the sculpture apart, piece by piece, and begin the process that casts the 8-foot-tall sculpture in bronze. Throughout a series of molds, wax, and more molds, the sculpture begins to take its final steps at a Colorado foundry.
Once that happens and you get that metal poured into the molds, what you're doing is you're just replacing what was wax with bronze. And at that point, then everything is put together like a puzzle. That allows you to put structure in. So inside the Gibson is a network of stainless, which helps support it and lift that bronze up into the air.
As countless hours of crafting the sculpture came to a close, friends and fans alike of Bob Gibson came out to see the unveiling of this spectacular piece of art on a cold April morning that became even more special before the final reveal.
Now therefore I, Dave Heineman, the governor of the great state of Nebraska, do hereby proclaim the 11th day of April 2013 as Bob Gibson Day in Nebraska. Congratulations, Bob.
Well, the day is here. It's been a very long time since we first had conversations about what the work would be. And now today in the cold, but in this room, it is warm. We honor Bob Gibson in bronze. I'm a firm believer that when you put something in bronze, when you make it, it should be relevant and important. And so at that moment, the reveal, the dedication is for Bob Gibson. You know, it's not about me. It's about Bob's memory and Bob's efforts and Bob's life.
Efforts and a life that inspired this 8-foot bronze marvel. But as with Gibson, he hopes in the long run it means more and inspires someone else to greatness.
I hope it does. You always hope that what you do, especially if it's something that's positive, inspire somebody else, and whether it's a kid or an adult. You know, maybe I did something else in my life that an adult would say, you know, it's pretty neat. And, yeah, you hope that happens.